Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat for the week of June 5th, 2015. I am your host, Jose Otero, and I'm joined once again by Brian Altano.
I haven't been on the show in months.
And whose fault is that?
It's mine. It's mine.
Okay.
I was traveling abroad.
Own it. Cheating on us with another... No, that's not true.
Did you eat veal brains?
wife?
Did you eat veal brains?
I did.
You did not.
I did sweetbreads.
No, okay, that's different. That's hypothalamus.
Well, before he tells us more,
really?
also joining
That's
us
a
once
nastier
again...
part of the brain.
Joining us once again, Schneider.
It's for thinking too. Hey.
And this week we were talking. I want to hear Brian's Splatoon experience a little bit, just because I remember when we went up to Redmond to play it at Nintendo of America. I think you walked out of the room with a different take than the one you have now. So I'm curious to see, or has it changed? I want to hear more about that.
How does that relate to sweetbreads?
I don't know.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
And then we're going to talk about Nintendo's next platform and how it might run on Android. Psych! No, it doesn't, says Nintendo the
Don't
day
buy
after.
it.
But well, we're going to have a discussion about that because maybe there's some merit to it after all.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a little bit of a shorter show. And let's talk about where have you been?
I was in where was I? I was in Paris, Barcelona, Nice, Versailles, and Ventimiglia, which is Italy.
That's
Nice.
so jet set.
I like.
Wow, you're fancy, man.
Yeah,
Fancy.
I was kind of around all over the place. It was great though, because the cool thing is when you get to Europe, you can do that very easily.
Yeah.
For when someone in America goes, "I'm going to Mexico," it's like, oh my god, it's either like, are you going on vacation or is everything okay? But in Europe, you can get on a train and go somewhere completely different.
Okay. I used to drive to Paris for breakfast from Germany.
Yeah, like right, and that's great, right? Like we went to Italy for lunch one day because like you just can, and you can take a train there, and you get off the train, and you're like, when do they strip search me? And you're like, oh, we don't. We don't care. You're just we trust you, and I'm like, I don't know what that's like.
So wait,
I live in a country that's very different than
in
that.
the past year, you've been to Japan and now these list of places. Which kind of stood out to you most?
Well, I mean, so the weird thing is that Japan is obviously for me as a video game guy, it's so much more, amazing culturally.
Even though today the Japanese video game industry is in a way different place.
It is in a different place, but it's still kind of everywhere. Like you kind of see it everywhere, and I didn't really get that in Paris. Like you didn't see it's. I've lived in major cities. I live in San Francisco. I used to live in New York. I remember like living in New York and seeing huge billboards for video games all the time. Like Times Square has GTA ads in it sometimes. But I was walking around Paris and I was kind of like, does no one here play video games? And then I turned this corner and there's this one street of all like retro video game shops, and I saw amiibos in there. Like I saw people were tweeting at me like, "You're in Europe, go buy some amiibos." And I saw a Lucina for €75, which is like $82 or something.
Did you
like
buy
that.
anything?
No, of course not. No.
Did you buy any of the lies? I don't.
No,
believe
so
you
the
at
one
all. What?
thing, the one thing I bought, which I tweeted a picture of, if you look at my timeline, Agent Bizzle, I tweeted this picture when I was in Barcelona. There's these things called Kaigenes or something like that.
Yeah.
And they're, do you guys know about this stuff? So they're from Catalan, and there are these things that they give out at Christmas as gifts that are these pop cultural characters made as little sculptures, and they're all pooping.
So you were first in line, of course.
So I'm walking by the store and I see this little handmade like pottery Super Mario, and he's got this look on his face like something weird happening behind him, like he just saw a ghost.
He's going for a one-up,
and he's squatting like he's gonna do this jump, and I'm like, interesting. And there's all these characters next to him, and they all have their kind of this squat look, and I'm like, that's weird. I guess in Spain they have this thing where they like these characters who are sitting or squatting. So I go into the store, and I look at the backs of all these figures, and all of them are taking dumps. All of them. So there's this Mario, and he's just got this big, huge, coily turd behind him.
Can't believe this is a thing.
Did it have eyes at least? The turd needs eyes.
It's a Mario turd. It's a Goomba. That's how.
So of course I had to buy it, and I was tweeting like, "Man, Spain, you have the weirdest amiibos here," because it even had a little base and everything.
Wow.
But no, it was cool. It was like I was in Versailles, and there was this magazine they were giving out that had this big Splatoon thing on the back of it, and everything was in French, and it's like
Splatoon.
Yeah, and it's really cool to see all that stuff. Like their video game magazines there are awesome because there's still a ton of them, and they're packaged with like they're all wrapped in. I don't know if you remember this pair, but all of their magazines and children's books and stuff like that are sold in magazine stands are wrapped in this huge plastic with like a big toy in it.
Cellophane?
Or it's like when I went to Japan and I brought you back that little Smash Brothers book that was just like they just threw it in with a magazine. And
they love packaging in Japan. Like
and
they go out of their minds.
That's the reason for buying physical magazines, right? The attraction is you get something different that you either build out of cardboard airport. Or
So lastly, it was really cool to go to the Louvre and see more 3DSs than I've ever seen in my entire life.
That's right. Because
did
of
you
the
try
tour.
it? Did you try the
I did.
Louvre?
It's cool. It's like, it's definitely something for somebody who wants to spend an entire day there because there's just so much. But like they sell a cart there that I didn't.
You didn't buy it.
I didn't buy because I don't have a UK or a European.
No, it's not region locked. You should have talked to me.
What?
I got so a good friend of the show, Matt Leone, went to Paris. I forgot why. And I asked him, you're going to the Louvre? He's like, yes. I was like, please bring me back one of those because I knew it's not region locked. You can put it in. I haven't opened it though. I just have it at home because it's just where else can you buy this thing?
It's only there. It's really cool to see a 3D. They have like in their gift shop. There's a 3DS demo kiosk that has the Mona Lisa 3DS game on it. But I didn't know it was region free because none of their things are region free.
That's the crazy part.
That's the one.
I have been told it is region free. I have never popped it into my 3DS, but I want to believe these people.
So this is like your virtual tour guide for those who don't know.
So Nintendo
right?
partnered with the Louvre, which is one of the most amazing art, probably the most amazing art museum in the world. It's got the Mona Lisa in it. It's got.
If you play Assassin's Creed, you can climb on top.
Yeah. There were. I mean, this is the type of museum you could spend an entire day in. It's just huge. So you can go around with this headset and with your 3DS, and as you're walking up to paintings, it kind of knows where you're going and gives you descriptions of them and history and the artists and all that stuff like that.
And it's all audio. It's really sharp. It's really well done.
Yeah, and like I'm sure our listeners have been to art museums where they give you like a headset or there's like little things like that. But this is Nintendo branded, and it's really cool that Nintendo does a lot of weird things, and sometimes they do weird things that are dumb, and sometimes they do weird things that are really cool, and this is one of the really cool ones.
One, it's really visual too, in that it tells you, hey, if you explore the base of the statue, like on the left, and they show you on the screen like where to sort of pay attention, and they'll say, this thing, like they'll point things out to you through this interactive sort of tour. And this started somewhat in Japan with the DS, believe it or not. Like actually the DS, I can remember reading a couple of stories where the DS was used in museums. You could even use the DS at the Mariners ballpark at one point to order food on the menu.
That's right.
Yeah, so these are just fun little things that they tried, experiments.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, very cool. So 2DSs or just full-on new 3DSs?
3DSs.
Like, I'm just curious.
Well, no, not the new 3DS. They didn't have the extra little nub or anything.
So I figured, part of me thought 2DS existed just so it would be a cheap solution for like museums to just buy and have these people walk around with it.
Yeah, that could work.
Just a thought.
But see, you can't put those in your pocket, and you kind of don't want to have to always hold it.
They do have straps for you to just hang them from your neck.
Are you
so you
serious?
can wear them like an old lady.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love wearing stuff like an old lady.
But no, it's good to be back. It was like I love being away, but it's also you do feel like you miss a lot sort of culturally. And one of the things was like the Splatoon thing was happening, and I mean obviously I'm on my honeymoon. I'm not thinking about it too much.
You were totally thinking of it. I can tell.
I was like, I bet there's a bunch of amiibos waiting for me at my desk when I get home. But I came back and I tried to play The Witcher, and I was like, I don't think I have the capacity for this game right now. It's just a little too much for me. Then I sat down to play Splatoon, and I'm like, this is exactly what I need right now.
All right, so let's transition to that.
Very
then.
fun. But first, I want to know how were the sweetbreads though?
Well, is this really relevant? Make it fast.
No, it's one of the few dishes where the same word describes possibly two different things and multiple animals. Like it can be multiple baby animals like veal, baby goat, whatever, and it can be a part of the brain or the stomach. So
it's a little weird.
Yeah.
Texturally, it's very strange.
Sweetbread.
So you basically, I went to this restaurant called Spring, which is like a 5-course thing with wine pairings. Excellent meal. If you're ever in Paris, look up Spring. And
sounds very French.
Yes. For the main course, they brought
Spring.
They brought out. They brought out a veal, and on the side, and they're like, and we also paired it with some delicious sweetbreads.
So it was veal then,
yeah. And I'm like, oh, I remember Pear telling me about these, and I'm not really skittish.
I love breads of all kinds.
Yeah, well, that's the thing,
this
right?
Is the sweet one.
Yeah, like, and I thought that was like, oh, maybe it's got like it's bread with cinnamon or something, and I'm kind of poking it, and I'm like, that's a weird part of this animal that I'm not sure what it is. So it's the brain.
It's usually brain, but it can also be veal stomach. Or, I mean, it can be baby goat too, or sheep.
Right,
or whatever.
right. Yeah, a little weird.
Yeah. But they can make it in different ways where it's amazing, or it's like, that's like something a doctor should have in his tray. All right, I'm sorry.
And we're done. So let's move over to. I couldn't take it anymore.
I want to point out it's very early in the morning on a Friday.
So sorry about
I'm a little
lack of focus.
I could go for some awful right now.
We're at 10 minutes. Let's do this. So Splatoon. So you've been playing. So I thought last podcast would be the last time we would talk about Splatoon for a while, but it dawned on me that well, you and I talked the other day, like once you got back from your trip.
Yeah, we
and you were
talked about
saying
it a lot.
you've been playing multiplayer, which to me was like, because one thing we
that's
know
right,
about
he's a
Brian,
multiplayer hater.
he is the anti-multiplayer.
I'm online multiplayer.
Brian's
hater.
solo.
I love local multiplayer.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So this to me just set off a huge alarm. Like, you're kidding. Like, you're playing multiplayer. So let's talk about this. So what?
Well, his parents don't want him talking to people. So
Yeah,
That's
this
right.
is
Yeah, I
literally-
moved across the country from my parents, but I still get phone calls about don't use voice chat, don't
That's
talk
right.
to
Yeah,
strangers.
yeah.
Yeah,
No. But seriously, so we played this game in Redmond, and I remember when we left, you were happy with it, but I wasn't sure if you were 100% sold on it.
Yeah, so I mean, we actually noticed a couple things when we were in Redmond that we could talk about. That were when you go to a demo like that, you're playing it standing up. You're surrounded by a bunch of people. It's like, I mean, I'm not going to complain about my job, but it's kind of disingenuous to the way you play a game at home versus what you do at a preview event. Like, you go to a preview event, there's banners for the games everywhere. You play standing up. We played with motion control on, which is a little.
Well, and they wouldn't let us turn it off.
Right.
Sorry, just
right.
to help.
No, I'm glad you said that because
Yeah.
I was going to.
And you hurry too. You don't get the sense of like kind of like trying it out and adjusting the settings. Like, you gotta go because there's somebody in line.
And there's a PR guy
Yeah.
standing next to you, kind of being like, "Oh, you can do that. You can do this." Like that sense of
No, don't you? Oh.
Backseat driving.
yeah, and that's okay. But I mean, the sense of discovery that I get playing a game by myself is kind of lost in an event like that, right? And I think it's the same way I'm always a little weird about E3 because it's like we get to see a demo for the first time played in front of 10,000 people in a big theater, and I'm gonna play that game by myself in a small room, you know, with the lights down or whatever. So Splatoon was something I walked away from going like, it's interesting. I don't know if it's really grabbing me yet. I actually thought the maneuvering was kind of slow. Like, actually, platforming is a little clunky, a little slow. Like, the character does not move like Mario or anything like that, or even Link in a way of I'm used to playing a lot of kind of 3D Nintendo games. And then I dug some time into it at home, and immediately, aside from the style, which is fantastic, I really appreciate like the artistically what they're going with the game. I was surprised at how inviting it was, and how it gave me that sort of one more game feeling, and how things were sectioned off by level, which made me kept wanting to go play a little more. And I found myself playing Splatoon for about 30 to 45 minutes at a time, and then I kind of step away, and a couple hours go by, and I start thinking about it, and again, I'm like, oh man, I want to jump back in there.
Yeah.
And I think there's a great energy to that gun goes off, and the game starts, and everyone just makes a huge mess, and it's very different than every other Nintendo game is about. Sort of like painstakingly collecting things or killing all the enemies, removing things from the world. Like everything is so clean and organized in Nintendo games, and in Japan in general. And this was now all of a sudden aesthetically a game that was about being a disaster, and I love that.
And that's what really sold me on the game is like this level transformation right off the bat, right? In shooting games, like you all start at the same spawn point, and you all run away, and like some people stick together. It's like it's cool to get that kind of adrenaline rush of having soldiers attack. In this game, though, it's almost like this, this virus taking over the level. Like you see this instant impact of everybody creating a mess, and it just I think it creates a sense of a wave taking over this level.
Yeah.
I really like that. I mean, it's a clever game. I was traveling. I was in New York the entire week, so I didn't get to play the new level at all.
Oh, I
right?
did.
Yeah,
I did. Port Mackerel's pretty cool. I will say before I talk about Port Mackerel that it is interesting that Nintendo took territory control, which is a hardcore PvP concept in a lot of multiplayer games, and turned it into competitive coloring.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
You are competitively like coloring the map and trying to do it faster than another team. I never thought I would ever say that out
Which
loud.
is interesting, right? Because it takes away that sort of like Call of Duty approach of like murder everybody, and it makes it sort of about like killing people. To me in Splatoon is almost kind of secondary to covering the level, which means that everyone's sort of, they have this job they're doing, and then you see someone pop up and you're like, I gotta murder that guy because he's, and he's like, why don't murder me? I'm just painting over here.
I'm just painting. I will say though that have you guys been playing ranked before we talk about Port Mackerel? Have you been playing ranked?
No, I haven't gotten into that yet.
I got to 10 before I left on my trip.
Ranked flips the T tables. Like it just, like that's it. This completely upends it in that there's one zone to color, and in order to dominate and continue to paint it in your color, you have to take them out.
Yeah.
Like there's no way around that, I think.
So does that mean like it kind of like rollers become super weak in that kind of setup because it's more confined, or
No,
is it
it's definitely more chaotic because everyone is focused on one location, and it depends on the map, right? Some maps have that you have to control 2 spots in order to run down the timer at once. Some have that you have to control just one big space. I wouldn't say rollers are less effective, but you have to be careful when you use it.
Yeah.
And I will say that in the middle of the chaos, you kind of got to keep your eye on the prize a little bit more. For example, what I love to do, and sometimes this really works and sometimes it doesn't, is the shootout is happening, both sides are going at it, and I'm just like la la la, painting through and around, and just like trying not to look anyone in the eye so that they won't shoot me. And sometimes I will make it through a section and quickly paint the ground while they're all shooting at each other, and other times I'll get got like so.
I'm
quickly.
noticing there's a lot of way more depth to the combat than I thought there would be. Like there's almost this kind of like portal level of things that happen sometimes where you can be shooting somebody and you shoot the wall behind them or a ramp behind them, and then you slip underneath them, slip up the ramp, spin around and shoot them in the back of the head. And they're just like, you don't really get that in a lot of other games like that. It's a little slower than I thought it would be, but once you get into that kind of dip and dive of the squid mode, you kind of get the rhythm of it a lot better.
Yeah, and you can create these choke points with color too, right? Like you back somebody into the corner and then you toss a bomb over there. I mean, it's just there's a lot to that game. It seemed very simple at first, but now you've seen kind of when expert players are arriving on the scene too, and are mopping the floor with others. It's pretty cool to see kind of like the different strategies.
Oh yeah, no, every like 7 or 8 or 10 games, there'll be a guy in there that's just a god.
Yeah,
like how
Squid Jesus? Is that you? Jesus, that's me.
Are you Squid
Jesus?
Squeezes?
Yeah, no.
Are you that good, really?
I
shouldn't be surprised.
No, I'm okay. We have a video on IGN folks could watch where I kind of did a good job, but it depends on the weapon too. Like and I've talked about this before. It really, you have to build your strategy around the paintbrush you're using, right? So like if you're using the Spider Shot Junior, that's that short range Uzi. Like making sure you're painting everything in sight is really good, and moving a lot is really good. But when you have something that's long range, you have to play the range game and like pick your targets carefully, but also lay down paint. I really wish this game had a spectator mode. Like I really, really, really find myself wishing I could watch matches in the way I watch Smash Brothers matches.
Especially when
sometimes.
waiting,
Yeah, or even just if I'm waiting to join, it would be fun to watch. Or just if I want to watch and just like in Smash Brothers, you can sort of put a wager on who's going to win. Like that is fun to watch because you get to watch certain strategies develop for different characters. And I feel like the weapons of Splatoon are very unique, like the characters in Smash Brothers, where there are certain combinations, certain ways to play, certain things you should be trying to immediately do.
Yeah. So is there any news on whether some of the perks or other like upgrades, whether they unbalance the game yet, like the kind of just pumping up speed to the max, or or preserving pain?
I was worried about that.
I'm curious how balanced it is.
There's a lot of variables.
If any of our listeners have noticed whether a certain combination works really well, email us at nvc@ign.com.
Yeah, I would say though that the 3-slot gear, the 4-slot gear, like the stuff that's really higher level, doesn't give you the biggest advantage in the world. Like, okay, maybe you will like store up on paint or be able to use your paint a bit longer, but if someone outplays you, they will flat out beat you.
Right.
Yeah. And that's something that I do admire about the system that's in place. So far, I haven't found any combination that's overwhelming. And I have also played with level 20s as a level, well, maybe not as a level 2, but I have played with higher level characters against higher level characters and wrecked. Sure. At the same time, I've also gotten wrecked. So it really depends on just, how well you handle a situation.
I love, the other stuff that I didn't notice in the beginning were kind of like the care with the characters, like the way the shopkeeps look and everything. I mean, I love the tempura shrimp guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's such an awesome character.
He's great.
It's amazing.
Yeah, Shrimp Kicks is the spot.
I wanted to talk a little bit, too, about, and Jose, you and I were talking about this off mic the other day, but I think it's very puzzling that they're putting out these updates that were already on the disc. That you're not actually downloading, because I feel like they trickled out a few days after the game was out already, and I think
Mackerel was one of them.
Yeah,
the Zapper was one of them. Sorry, just to put context for folks.
And it was there. You didn't have to download anything; it was there. It was just a timed unlock. And I know that some of the complaints being kind of thrown around for Splatoon when it launched and when it was getting reviewed was that it was a little light on content.
I made that complaint.
Sure, and it's puzzling to me to have held that stuff even just a few short days, and I think there's even more stuff trickling out in the next few days, right?
Yeah, and that
the paintbrush is tonight, right? Just
tonight.
To give folks context, the paintbrush weapon that they talked about during the Splatoon Direct launches tonight at 7 p.m.
And is that like a roller, or is
it's
it like
a roller, but it doesn't paint in a wide a wide arc behind you. Instead, it's sort of a thin line.
Got
it seems faster too, which is kind of nuts. And if you swing it, rather than flicking paint straight ahead, you just
It's like a little baseball bat.
Yeah, he swings it back and forth, and just
That's
a whole
cool.
bunch of paint flies out of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach. I do think that they were pressed for time. I don't think they were ready, and that's not to say that the levels weren't done or these weapons weren't done. They weren't done 2 months ago, or a month ago when they locked down the content that would be on the disc. And I think that's where they also ran into strategy problems, like. When you send code to reviewers, you should have included that, right? Like you should have included the extra maps, and I think the infrastructure just didn't allow for that.
Right.
Where they always plan to have this timed unlocked, which, for the record, I love that stuff. I think it's so great to get this impetus to go back and play a game or check out a game on a certain date. I really like that, because sometimes you have a new game, you're like, oh, I got these other 15 games to play, and just that, oh, there's a new map that is going to be playable this Saturday. Just that like creates this kind of sense of an event happening. And
totally.
Okay, but what are some other changes? So I do think, though, the infrastructure was there for them to let us see some of that stuff.
You think
Port
so?
Mackerel was done, and it was done, and nothing needed to be downloaded to play Port Mackerel. Why the heck did I have to wait?
I think because
until after the game came out?
Because I don't think the
Review servers were on their own.
But I don't think the
thing.
the code they created for review took that into consideration yet. And I think that's
it
where
seemed to be the full game.
But that's where, as a developer, you take the risk. If I make that happen right now, instead of going through 2 more weeks of QA, the testing, making sure nothing breaks, I can introduce bugs into the code and issues, and then reviewers will say, well, this game's too buggy, right?
Okay.
That's always with software development, you have to make that call.
No, absolutely.
And I do think Nintendo is savvy enough to know that game needed a little bit more content, and they would have put it in if they had been able to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some changes we want to see made to Splatoon? Let's say you can have anything you want right now. Let's take content out of the equation.
Sure.
What are certain things that you'd like to see them revisit or go back to?
I'm obviously a big single player guy, and I was surprised. I guess I had low expectations, but I was surprised at actually both how much more kind of robust the single player was than I thought it would be, while also being kind of disappointed at how shallow it is for a Nintendo, single player game.
It clearly didn't start with this single player mode, right? It started as a team-based multiplayer.
But there's a lot of really cool ideas in it, like the sponges, and like the enemy design is really fascinating. Like there's just a lot of really smart, very Nintendo things in it. But it also feels like kind of a straight line through a bunch of levels, and then it kind of ends. So
and mechanically, you have sponges, you have these ink tubes, but none of them carry over to multiplayer.
Yeah,
they just seem to be inventions for single player.
Who knows? Maybe in the future, right?
Oh yeah, the ink tubes aren't in multiplayer
They're
at
not.
all, right?
Neither are the sponges. Neither are sort of the heavy artillery weapons you sometimes jump into, and that's fine. I don't think that necessarily everything needs to have a one-to-one crossover. Not saying that.
That can happen, by the way, when multiplayer and single player modes are developed by different teams too, right? Like
Which
you've seen
seems to
this
be the case.
with other games, major games, and so sometimes you get something in single player that doesn't appear in multiplayer, but they can always add that.
Yeah, I remember I was sort of playing through single player going like, I feel that parts of this are training me for multiplayer, and I do understand that to some capacity, but at the same time it felt a lot like I'm learning mechanics in this game that will never carry over.
So if it had been that way, though, then it should have given you different weapons, right?
Yeah.
Like I thought it was going to be more of a tutorial too, where then it would basically make you use each one of the weapons, which isn't the case, right?
Yeah.
It's very
In order to do that, you have to buy Amiibo, which was what set me off. I'm just like, well, that would have been a really cool feature. Why put that behind a $13 toy?
But to me, the biggest change is now that we've seen it, let's get the presentation out of the way. Clearly, I boot this game up, especially once I'm done with single player. I boot this game up every day to jump into multiplayer.
Yep.
Don't make it so hard to get in.
Yeah,
right? Like,
Squid Sisters.
don't make me sit through the cutscene just at the start screen. I just want to hit that button, go into the lobby directly, and start matchmaking.
Or make that optional. Like, if I want to watch it, I can watch it. If I don't want to watch it, let me press a button to skip it.
Yeah, there's no reason. It's not like it's loading.
I also got the same message from them 2 times in a row, which was just like, hey, let's take a look at all the maps that we have. And I'm like, you don't need to tell me that again.
Yeah.
Like, let me just jump right in.
Well, and as more multiplayer ranked modes get added, well, then again, it seems like the way that program, the Squid Sisters thing, will unfold will be, okay, here's our Turf Wars map, and then here's our ranked multiplayer map.
Yep.
But I think ranked is all grouped, so even though there'll be more modes in ranked, I suspect they will all just use those 2 maps for 4 hours a day.
Yeah, that should be just once you're in the multiplayer screen, it should just show the maps that are there for each mode, and like you no longer have to see an introduction.
But where I was going to go with this is that the day you downloaded the Zapper and you got Pork Mackerel, that program felt even longer.
Yeah.
Like they had so much more to tell you, and I'm just like, just let me go.
Yeah.
I just want to get in the game. This is cute. I appreciate this for what it is. Callie and Mari are very clever. Good job, but don't force me to watch this stuff. Like,
Callie and Plaggy.
Callie and Plaggy. We should tell her. All right. I want spectator mode. I would love if that became a thing. I think that this game deserves it. I think this is a very tense, fun game to watch, and it unfolds so quickly. And it would be kind of cool to just tune in to watch a channel where you can just watch Splatoon matches play, and maybe even copy that idea from Smash Bros. Bet some of your coins on that.
Yeah.
Pick a side. I think the red team's got it.
I think that'd be cool. But in Mario Kart, like some of the additional features, like the sharing and the spectating, all that kind of stuff, like I just didn't do anything with in the end. Like I hear what you're saying. Like most of the time, where I would find a feature like that would be useful right now in order to play with you. You're online, I say join Jose, then it says no, his match is full, and here's a counter till when maybe you can ever join him, right? Like during that time, I'd love to see you play. That is just a natural point for me to.
But the sharing stuff in Mario Kart is where we got Luigi Death Stare. Without people's ability to upload those clips.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not for anyone else. It's just like I found like I didn't really use it that much.
I didn't either, honestly. Yeah. I mean, there's a difference between me saying like I'm going to use this a lot and me being like I'm glad this is here for other people. Like it's a lot. The same way when I play a game that has a lot of like custom create a character modes or create a level modes, I'm like I won't use this because I'm tired. I just wanted somebody else to make a game for me.
Give me the default. Give me the character on the cover.
Like Mario Maker. I don't know how many of those levels I'll actually make myself, but I will download thousands of them. So.
Yeah, no, that'll be cool. No, I look at it from the perspective of Smash Brothers, where I think for anyone who's curious on how they should be playing a certain weapon, a spectator mode would help them learn how other people are playing with that weapon. Yeah. And that's not to say, though, you have to be good at headshots to be good at Splatoon. We've said that before. But I do think that helps people sort of adapt and understand how they should be playing versus like just... Someone shot you. Here's who got you. Okay, jump back in.
That's cool.
All in all, I think it's really awesome to see such a kind of creative new IP from them. Yeah. And I want to see, in classic Nintendo fashion, I want to see more from this world. I want to see like a 2D platformer on 3DS. I want to see a puzzle game. Like I think there's a lot you can do with Splatoon and the characters and stuff like that.
And I think they need to commit to kind of names of characters, make them something real, because I do love the quirkiness of the character design. Like some people don't like that look in that world. Like my kids, like whenever the color schemes, like at the beginning of a match, they're like, what is it going to be? Is it going to be watermelon? Like when you get the bright pink and green, like they have names for all the color combinations. There's bubblegum and like it's just like it definitely appeals to kids, the look, but I actually really dig it too.
Yeah, it's got an amazing look, but it has absolute zero character in terms of development. Like you got Captain Cuttlefish, who is sort of the war veteran, who the war is still going on in his mind with the Octarians. You got Callie and Mari, who are personalities, but in the very Japanese way the TV personalities sort of carry themselves. And then you have Judd the Cat, who is a fun judge to watch.
He's amazing. I love that guy.
Yeah, it would be cool to see them sort of flesh it out. But I would almost say like this does kind of mirror the way they even approach Mario. Like you didn't really get a ton of information about Rosalina or a backstory unless you were willing to look for some of that stuff. But it would be cool to see them sort of develop this world a little more. Absolutely. Commit to names, commit to other things.
And I think, again, like I brought this up before, to me it's like Smash Brothers. The first game, you're like, man, this is a great concept. I love it. Doesn't have a lot of characters, doesn't have a lot of stages, but this is going to be something I'm going to be playing for a long time. And sure enough, right? Like here we are, like 5 games later. I'm hoping that happens with Splatoon, where some of the things that we're asking for now will be built in from the netgo, the get-go, netgo.
The netcode.
Built into the netcode. Man, my sweetbreads aren't working today.
All right, so because Pear needs a break, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Nintendo's next platform and some potentially earth-shattering stuff that they're saying isn't happening. More, you stay with us. We'll be right back. Go ahead, drink your water. All right, just start. And we're back. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. And we're back. Jose Otero here with Per Schneider and Brian Altano.
Hey.
And this week, some potentially, like, this is like, if this is true, and you're saying you already don't buy it, but let me set context for people. This week, the Japanese Nikkei, a respected business publication, reported that from sources cited from people with knowledge of what's going on at the Kyoto-based company headquarters for Nintendo, that Nintendo was considering or is considering an open platform like Android for to be part of what the NX will be.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? So
by the way, we brought this up in a previous podcast. We talked about what could the NX be? Could it be a kind of low-powered console, like a little cube, like the Ouya, right? Yeah. The Ouya is based on the Android system, so this sounds like it would be that direction.
Yeah, or you can say Fire TV, or there are other like Android-based
people were
platforms.
very quick to evoke the Ouya in the last week when this news story broke. By the way,
but let's talk about this. So the idea would be to give developers more flexibility making content that could also be on smartphones and tablets. So what does this mean? Well, for you, for the listener, this basically could mean, if this was true. By the way, Nintendo immediately said, nope, there is no truth to this story. Let me just read their statement. There is no truth to the report saying that we are planning to adopt Android for NX. That's all they said. But this adopting Android would mean that the walled garden approach to a console would not be there anymore. The sort of proprietary, you have to license a dev kit, you have to license certain tools to make your game. That would potentially not be there.
But you still have the well, you gotta get our permission and pay us to be on the platform, right? So you're not removing the walled garden per se. You're removing the hey, we're gonna sell you the $500 dev kit or something.
You're making it easier for people to have the software. Let me frame that right.
And that is, to be fair, that Nintendo has a huge issue in that not as many people as they want are contributing to their ecosystems, right? And so making it easier to develop for their platform is a good thing. The question though is, with Android, is that the right segment of the market? And like when I heard about, we joked about the Android OS before for NX, but like when I heard that rumor, I'm like, that seems wrong. Like if the idea is to get more companies on the machine, that makes sense. But Nintendo working with that platform disregards that they will have their biggest success on iOS in the mobile arena, right? Like their brands will work better on iOS devices like the iPad, like the iPhone, than on your Android devices.
That is because the iOS market is the more profitable market when it comes to selling app software and selling game software for those devices.
That's right. It's for monetization. It's especially those branded titles.
But at the same time, like, okay, so here's 5 things we should be thinking about, and these all came from a good friend of the show who will not be named. First, 5 things to think about, so you guys can respond or not respond. A unified base when it comes to smartphone and dedicated game devices basically makes things a lot easier. It'll make it easier to share assets, reuse code, port games. And if they're all on the same Android base, and they'd all be on the same Android base, so someone who made a game for Android or eventually ported an iOS game for Android can take that game to Nintendo, get permission from them. They'd have to pay a fee, of course, but at the same time, that's more software for that box. Like, that crossover potential is huge. Secondly, if NX has any sort of online sharing, social features, especially portable, then Android gets a lot of that out of the box. Third, from the beginning of...
They aren't awesome, but yes, keep going.
Okay. From the beginning of time, Nintendo has yet to make a hardware base that developers have ever set on record was easy to use, if you think about it. And Wii U might be the worst design they've had yet in terms of friendly to developers.
Can I jump in on that one, or do you want to finish all the points?
I'll finish that one first. You can jump in on this one, absolutely. Perhaps they finally throw in the towel and leave it to Android to fix that. Go ahead.
It's easy to use if you're making a very specific kind of game. Like, the feedback from developers is not that the Wii U is this mythical box set nobody can figure out. It's that they're making Xbox One, PC, and PlayStation 4 games at a certain at a certain kind of graphical prowess level. And so then when they want to downspec that to the Wii U, that's when it becomes a lot of work, and developers always want their stuff to look the best and perform the best, and that's where some are saying, well, maybe that's not worth the effort for me.
One, they have to think of, okay, how are we using 2 screens? We have to practically remake most of that that game.
Now, I've never heard from an indie developer, and if there are any listening, write in, and we see at IGN, I've never heard the argument that, it's too hard to bring my indie game to the Wii U because of programming hurdles. Like, that doesn't seem to be the big hurdle.
I don't think that was the emphasis of that point, but more in line with what you're saying, that you have to design a specific game around what that box is, and right now, that is up to how developers feel about it.
So one thing that is completely clear in my mind is that the NX will be part of a network that includes the Android space as well. Like, there's definitely going to be a connection where, the DNA games they have to somehow connect back to the NX, whether it's with profile and achievements or something like that, or actually being a virtual console. And at that point, you can imagine an Android-based virtual console for mobile games built into this device. I could see that. So it sounds very dangerous to say we'll go with the Android OS as the core when Nintendo loves to control that stuff, right?
But here's where we can go a bit further. So I was going to have him on the show today, but Francisco, who was over in our mobile department, big Android developer, loves to follow a lot of what Google does. Fortunately, we couldn't get him on today. But I did ask him a bunch of questions about this and asking, okay, so if Nintendo were to go Android, do they have to pay Google anything? First answer was no. Android is an open source platform. And the companies that make smartphones with Android, like Samsung or even Amazon Fire TV, Amazon's sort of game console, is built on Android, but they don't have to pay Android a thing. They customize it and make it however they mold it into whatever they want it to be. The only thing they would have to pay Google for is if they wanted the Google Play Store on it. Right. There is a fee tied to doing that. It's part of Google Mobile Services apparently. And if Nintendo opts out of that, which Amazon did. Amazon has a game-like console. What do they call that thing again? Is that the Fire TV? I forget. Yeah, Fire TV is a game-like console. They don't have the Google Play Store as part of it, so they don't pay Google a dime. They just instead have an Android base.
Handset manufacturers like Samsung have their own version of the store.
Yes.
There's definitely customization. I hear that. I think those are advantages, but there is the question whether this is a gaming OS, and whether that is really what a company like Nintendo wants. It's possible, right? Like they may have a completely different strategy for NX and for the future of gaming. Like we talk about quality of life and maybe toys and all how that ties together. So they may be saying, hey, instead of spending all this effort on developing our own OS and then having to deal with all the education to developers, all the documentation, all the tools, let's outsource that part to something and use something that already exists. That makes all the sense in the world. Will that be a competitive advantage though if they're still playing in the console arena against Sony and Microsoft?
I think it could be. I think just the idea that a game that is big on mobile and you give developers an avenue for them to have a easy way to put it on your box could be a big thing. But the problem with the
why
mobile
does that
market,
not work for Ouya though?
But the problem with the mobile market right now, to some degree, is that everyone is throwing crap at the wall to see what sticks, and no one is gating or turning some of those games away. Nintendo could do something incredible by being a store that says, you know what, we have certain restrictions, we have certain rules, and they're going to go approach it that way. Let's be fair. But for me, it's more, let's not just take everything that comes in, but establish a quality bar. And if this is not good enough, turn that game away.
Well, you have to do
that.
Even the Ouya does that, right? Like there are certain games that are developed for a touchscreen. You can't just put on a console and have it work with a normal controller. So it's not as turnkey as here's this entire world of Android games. And
I have a Amazon Fire TV and the proprietary controller they sell that you can buy separate for it, and you run into that issue a lot of this game was built for a touch screen and you're controlling it with a controller, and there's a prompt on the screen that even visually just says swipe to, and you're like, nah.
But I'm even talking more of a quality level in terms of the software.
You're saying the Nintendo seal of quality.
This game is a quality game, not so much just that it was built around a touchscreen and now it has a wonky controller interface, but more that this is a good game or this is not a good game. Let's be fair. I feel like I've heard criticism too that early on Steam was really good at you had to have quality software on the Steam store, and lately you can almost get anything on the Steam store. Apple's in the same boat. As long as you follow their guidelines, you can put anything up on the Apple Store, on the App Store technically. Last thing though, in terms of the last big question in my mind though, was that Google will iterate on Android. They're going to, right? There's Android M is right around the corner, something that they announced. If you're into that stuff, you should be reading about it or looking into it. But hardware makers get to choose or cherry pick what new features they want from each version of that OS as it changes.
Yeah.
So Nintendo could pick a dedicated Android base and stick to it for as long as they want and introduce or adopt changes over time when they feel like it.
But isn't this whole thing moot though if Nintendo comes out and says it's not true? Like, I mean,
yes and no.
It's a this was an official denial, right?
But
that can still mean they have an Android Virtual Console.
I got an answer for that. They officially denied that there wasn't a larger 3DS coming out, and that happened.
Well, no,
that's the quick answer everyone jumps to. I don't think that them coming out and outright denying it means that it's not a thing.
Yeah,
I will say that.
I think
I think you have to play the skeptic here.
They're usually pretty guarded in terms of like we don't comment on rumor and speculation, and for this one they outright did. So there's something there. But I think, I mean, you could both be right. I mean, they have lied before too.
Yeah,
so.
I don't think necessarily shooting something down that quickly means it's out of the question. However, we run into this a lot on the show, right? Where like you don't know what they're going to do.
I like the idea of being able to.
It's different though. Hold on a second. It's different when you ask one developer or one spokesperson. You say, "Hey, are you making this thing?" Versus the company responds officially and says,
"Was that the case with the 3DS XL?" I don't think it was. I think Nikkei reported it was the same cycle. Nikkei said, "Hey, a bigger 3DS is coming." And Nintendo said, "Nope, not a thing."
But only after you ask them. Like, they were quiet on it. That's usually what they do, is they don't respond. Whether it's true or not, they don't respond. I don't know. I think a partnership like that or embracing somebody else's platform has implications on like their business as a whole and shareholders. And they said, hey, there's too much risk in people thinking that this is true, therefore issue a denial. Again, that doesn't mean that it's not an Android-based virtual console or,
sure.
Yeah, we'll
that
see.
maybe Android is their lead platform for their games in the future, although that seems hard to believe.
I think it could be interesting. If they were to commit to something like this could change.
I like the idea of playing official Super Mario games and then hundreds of terrible knockoff Super Mario games on the same platform.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No.
But
That's not going to happen.
But I think
So it's happening on Android now, minus the official ones.
the reaction from fans to something like this, of course, would be rather negative, because when you think of an Android-based system, you think of lesser powered machines, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that case.
It doesn't have
right?
to be that case.
Well,
It does, though. Like, if you want the benefit of having an Android platform, you're also having the problem of a fragmented platform where there's so many different devices, right? That was what got mobile gaming into trouble in the old days, right? Like you call it Android, but there's so many different devices with so many different power levels that you can get a horrible experience on one of them and a better one on the other.
But that wouldn't be the case with a console like this.
Yeah, but all the games designed for the lowest common denominator will look like crap, and then you don't have an awesome story to tell fans either.
Well, you got that with Apple as well for a while, where they were like, this game is available on the iPhone 6, the iPhone 5S, and everybody else can go to hell. And a bunch of people had phones. And that's what happens when you splinter your audience.
But we do talk on the show constantly that they are a better software and games company than they are a tech-thinking company. So doing something like this, I think, is potentially them admitting a weakness, sure, but it's also making up for that weakness.
I'd say chipsets, right? Like, they are a great tech company when it comes to figuring stuff out, like, the controller rumble and the motion controls, all that stuff. They've never have the top of the line product. There's always someone out there who has better 3D or better motion, but they make it affordable and actually feasible, right?
And accessible,
they create something that you can actually sell.
Yeah.
That's why there's no VR headset from them, because they look at it, they said, no, in order to do this right, where I don't get a headache, you got to have a device that's $1,000. Nobody's going to buy it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the company that invented the video game controller as we know it, pretty much, and then reiterated on that multiple times.
That's right.
Or iterated on that multiple times. So I don't think it's totally fair to say that like they should be predominantly software, but I think that right now we're looking at the 3DS, which I would say that the 3D technology in that is pretty innovative for what they're doing. Or we're looking at the Wii U, and it's got some good ideas with the gamepad, but where we are currently in the last 5 years, I would say that they've kind of stepped down or stepped back a little bit in terms of innovation in the hardware sense.
Yeah.
But their games are still really awesome, so who knows?
Yeah, I would argue that in the hardware sense, outside of the controller and figuring that stuff out, they have never been, in agreement with you, they have never been focused on being the best piece of tech on the market.
No, they've never. No,
they've
that's
never.
True. Yeah.
And so under that thinking, for some people, that's the turnoff too. They want them to be, and that's not how Nintendo works.
Though N64 was different, I think. I think they were just held back by their choice of storage medium, but like the actual, I mean, the games looked so much better on the N64 for a while. The PlayStation had more depth, right?
Yeah.
Like
Less fuzzy
once
too.
once people figured out how to not have the walls jitter in every game, like PSX games looked better than N64 games in the end. But like at the beginning, having these smooth walls and polygons and bright colors worked pretty nicely.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so we're pretty much done with that, and we've talked NX to death on the show. So
all we know about NX is nothing.
I did want to add one more thing real quick.
Oh, go ahead, man.
I noticed that people are starting to make concept sketches and fan art of the mock-ups, and it got me like weirdly nostalgic because I always loved this time of like in the Nintendo sort of console life cycle where people start getting ideas of what a system should be, and they start mocking it up. Like I remember this for the GameCube, for the N64, the Wii. Like once they called it the Revolution, like all the helmet designs that people drew. So I love that stuff. Keep making that stuff. It's so goofy. It's so endearing. Sometimes it's genius. Sometimes it's awful. But I love that it exists. Like it's such a cool time to be a Nintendo fan.
I love the Revolution mock-ups that were all based on like communist propaganda.
Yeah,
They all had like hammers and sickles and fists going up.
And then Nintendo themselves, I remember they released those mock-ups of those controllers they never put out, which one of them was a star with like a big win button in it. Do you remember those?
Yes.
So I really do love this time.
Right,
like this is like we as gamers, we have this awesome obsession with hardware and tech and controllers and stuff like that, and just like the photoshops that come from all this, and then you have like really talented guys in CAD doing 3D renders, and then a guy with MS Paint doing the worst thing you've ever seen. I love all of it, so keep it coming, keep making it, and send it over to us because it's fantastic.
And that obsession with video games is about to hit its peak because in 2 weeks, oh my goodness,
What's
E3, the Electronic Gaming Expo.
I've heard of
here.
this thing.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. And next week's show, we're going to possibly take our last sort of last shots at what's going to happen at E3.
Yeah.
What do we think will be there? What we don't think will be there? I know we had our prediction show where we each dropped 5 predictions each.
Yeah.
But I'd rather look at this holistically from Mario Maker, what gets said? Star Fox, what gets said? Shin Megami Tensei Cross.
You mentioned the other day
Persona.
that it's been 5 years since Metroid.
Since Metroid Other M.
Wow,
it has
really?
been-
5 years.
August 31st will be 5 years since Other M.
Just
came
kind of
and
a
went.
weird note to leave on, but yeah. So
It has
That's
been that
really
long.
long. Like,
That's a
I
really
don't
long
understand
time.
what always happens with this franchise, that they just kind of forget about it. You
it's
know,
very odd.
like,
Yeah.
man, it's like the same with Castlevania, though. You know, like where. Like, I felt like we had a Castlevania model that worked for a while, and then they kind of forgot about that, you know, because everybody wants to build something different. It's like, we got to be more like God of War, and like, it'll all come back in the end. You know?
Yeah.
Some of
They
those
did with Castlevania, at least. Egavania now.
Well, yeah, and some of those designers leave and then do it on their own. You know,
Yep.
let's hope that doesn't happen with Metroid.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the time is ready for another Metroid game. I just want one so badly. I listened to you guys' discussion in the car about, on GameScoop this morning.
Oh.
So that was cool. You guys did a Nintendo prediction show while we were out. That was very insightful.
Okay.
But now we're also in the kind of pre-E3 time where some publishers are already bringing out games.
Yeah.
You know, we've already, stuff we can't talk about, heard a bunch of stuff for E3 you know, from all the different companies. But, you know, now you have Fallout 4 is out in the open, you know, and there will be a couple more things, I think, coming up before E3.
Sure, we got the Uncharted collection the other day. I think that like
Not on purpose, right?
Not on purpose. I think that kind of forced their hands, but they announced that was a few hours early anyway. But this E3, we've seen a lot more going in than I think almost ever, and I think it's because everyone is fighting for more space than ever. There's more press conferences than ever. I have no idea how we're going to cover the Nintendo press conference when it's happening the same exact time.
No, Square moved.
They moved?
Yeah.
Oh,
you were on
good.
vacation while you were sleeping.
Wow. Yeah,
that feels nice.
It's all good.
I
There's
thought we were
some
going to have
overlap.
2 big TVs in the war room with
No.
everyone yelling at the same
There's some
time.
overlap with the post-show, like when that one ends.
And
but-
Nintendo, I mean, they had a direct just a few days ago, so it's kind of interesting.
Micro. Micro.
A micro direct.
Right. Micro direct.
And
So-
then some announcements with like Smash Brothers, Lucas, and all.
Lucas will be available
Yeah.
June 14th. You to buy. This is not a pre-ordered like Mewtwo code DLC situation.
Right.
You can go online and buy Lucas, and you can buy Mewtwo, and that signals to me. Smash Bros. Like, are they going to talk about who's the next Smash Brothers character at E3? I think so.
Is this
I
the
would guess
last
so.
one from the original roster, or is there something else left?
You still have who is
Ignoring Ice Climbers, who
Wait,
are not
from the
coming,
original
right?
roster,
like
the
the ones we
Roy's
knew
still
were
missing.
coming. Still, Roy is
still missing.
There's Wolf.
Gray Fox. Wolf. That's
Yeah.
right. I
Oh,
call him
yeah.
Gray
yeah,
Fox.
Gray Fox.
Yeah.
Gray
The
Fox.
Gray Fox.
My guess would be Wolf would be one of the next ones to sort of just round off all the, the non-licensed ones, right? Like stuff like Snake, obviously, is Snake.
Yeah.
Who knows where that's going to be? But I
Yeah.
think Wolf's one of the last ones, non-Ice Climbers, non-licensed.
Konami will announce Snake for Smash Brothers at E3. This character created by
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
who also created with his production company named Beep.
Yep.
Yeah. No,
All right.
that's not a good
God.
thing with a Kojima game.
So last episode we asked for you to send in E3 question block questions. I see a bunch in here, but I don't see enough in here. So we're moving that
What?
topic to next episode. It's going to be a big E3 extravaganza once again. No predictions.
You like that girl from Peanuts with the football always, man.
Oh,
is
yeah,
moving
Lucy.
football.
I'm like Lucy.
Yeah.
Someone works for us named Lucy.
Here's your
already.
question block.
Yep.
Good
no,
grief.
not this week. All right, but send those in and put in the subject line Nintendo E3 question block. E3 question block. Actually, let's go with that one. Uniform E3 question block. Send us what you think will happen on show or something that you want us to talk about on the podcast. And that's it. We didn't have a ton of topics this week, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes and a lot of crazy work happening in the office.
This coming week is when we're actually starting to pack up our studio equipment. We gotta, we can't just buy all new equipment for E3. We gotta pack up our stuff here,
man,
get
we
it
gotta
all
record this show
shipped
earlier
down.
next
Yeah,
week. Shoot,
and so
I
we
didn't
gotta
think about
we gotta pre-prep a bunch of stuff because we're already like some people are there already like Friday and Saturday,
Yep.
and we're building our booth on the show floor so you guys get a live show nonstop after the press conferences. The press conferences are in like 15 different places, so we gotta have satellite trucks and all that kind of stuff. So it's gonna be crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, but
So-
you can watch us. That's the good news.
Yeah, we'll all be there. We'll be doing pre and post shows for everything. We'll be covering everything on the floor. We'll be doing conversations and news videos and podcasts. Everything you know us for. We'll be there. So this will be a big one. And when we get back from E3 on June 27th this year, 2015, here in San Francisco, we're having something called the IGN House Party 2015. We're getting a bunch of our shows together, such as Podcast Unlocked is turning its 200th episode. Podcast Beyond is getting its 400th
Congrats,
episode.
Beyond.
Congrats.
We didn't fall on an anniversary, but I'll be there. A bunch of you guys will be there.
We will be there
I'll
street
be there.
passing. So
Yeah, we'll be
like,
there street passing. There'll be a Nintendo presence there. I mean, it's IGN, so of course there's always a little Nintendo in us. And it's here in San Francisco. You can head on over to the Eventbrite for that. We've tweeted out. Just Google IGN House Party 2015. You'll find it. We have tickets available. There's only like 100 tickets left. So if you want to get in on that, now is your time.
Mm-hmm.
And we will, if you do come to the show, like I sometimes hear from fans that said, I saw you, but I didn't say hi. Don't do that. Like,
Right.
Come up, say hi, introduce yourself. Let us know if you're listening to one of the shows. If you have an IGN username, who you are. It's always really nice. I mean, like in New York again, I met 2 people who are like, I love NBC. So it's great to hear from you guys.
Whoa! You
Yeah.
left out part of the story.
Huh?
They made that GM money
Yeah, one of
reference
them
too.
made it. Yes.
Yes.
No,
Yeah. He's
thank you very
blushing.
much.
Just
That was
for
funny.
audio only. listeners.
I wasn't ready for that one too.
Yeah.
Like we talked about something. Goes that GM money? I'm like Jose.
Jose strikes. All right. Thank you for listening to Nintendo Voice Chat. We are a weekly show on IGN, but we are not the only piece of content on IGN. In fact, you should head on over to IGN.com because it keeps the lights on and it keeps the mics on. You want podcasts. That's how this works.
Yep.
So
Powered
make sure
mics.
you come check us out. Next week, this is not Nintendo related, but there is a huge Metal Gear Solid 5 cover story coming to the site on Tuesday. Do not miss it. It is going to be worth your time. Trust me. I worked on this myself
Not for
painstakingly
Nintendo,
for a while. Yeah, not Nintendo, but Metal Gear's so big. I love Metal Gear, and you should definitely check that out. If you have feedback for the podcast, make sure you email us at nvc@ign.com. You can also head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show.
Yeah,
Don't
please do.
forget, you want to send us an E3 question block question because next week it is the last show you get before E3, and it is going to be an E3 extravaganza. You heard it here. We're going to be excited, so make sure you check that out. Lastly, you can find us on Twitter. You can find Brian Altano at
Agent Bizzle.
You can find Per Schneider at
Per IGN.
And you can find myself, Jose_Otero. Thank you so much for listening to the show. In fact, we owe you a big thank you. May was the biggest download month in NVC history.
Awesome.
What happened?
Could not
I wasn't
believe
here.
it.
Oh, Brian wasn't on.
That's not true. Thank you so much for that.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, this just could not believe it when I looked at the numbers this past week. So
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
We are very happy for your support, and we will continue to try and make great shows for you. We promise.
That's right.
Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back next week with more Nintendo Voice Chat.
Get the thing.